where they got under the... Brown leaf rag to start off with there. Sounds good. Whatever it is he's doing, huh?
One I watched later on, I forgot what too it's in, is that the Cowboy Waltz. Yeah, later on we get it.
Yeah, let's see. Sugar Tree Stomp. Oh, wait.
hunting right now, so I don't have what we did the other time. We'll end up with a bunch of foot slapping. Yeah, we got
Thompson. I can't play that.
Oh, no, I couldn't play that.
Sometimes I don't play very much.
I've got to have something on it.
Yeah, well, we need to stay room yet.
Intricate, not very difficult, you know, and that's the old ones were usually pretty.
It's an old one. It had to be old because I played the thing. When you were playing it back then when I was, well, at least 50 years. So I don't know what it was before then.
Still going? I can't see. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. Lookers.
Yeah. We sound good together.
Yeah.
Thing got loosened up and going good. We sound harmonized.
How's your shoulder again? All right? Where you fell?
So
Ooh, lucky. All right.
well, let's go to some other key. What key you want to go to? C. C. Huh? Let's get that East Tennessee blues.
Oh, I see.
You big part. Let's see.
I need to come and look at him. Yeah, but I mean, I forgot.
A7 and D.
I know it, but I got mixed up. I skipped the A. I kept going straight to D, and I should have hit the A. That threw me off.
There's a little hit lick of A right there. Just before you hit the D.
Yeah, I know it, and that's what I forgot.
Let's see.
Flag, man. Down, I didn't have anywhere to go. I got to go back up high then. But then I can't go on. I need to jump up here somewhere.
No.
Okay. No.
Open the gate.
Let's go with that. I was missing one lick.
Yeah.
If I get it.
I kind of like that because it's something different.
Yeah.
Especially when it's like ignorant. So I'll get that Ozarks Mountain and get your A9 on it.
Yeah.
Just by one beat.
I know that. Okay.
The first two parts and the next time you use
go
it.
right.
Remember that. Next time you use an F on the third part, place of the A, you did go. good, I guess.
Yep. Got the second, let's do twice on that first part.
I forgot to pay one of my parts on that, but then come out of that. So I just paid it, and that feeling went back to the king. Still got tape there.
Yeah. Oh yeah, you've got a third left.
14 days, you remember how that goes?
Yeah, that's a
It gets an A,
C.
gets an A minor. Gets an A minor, and it's on the last of the headed case.
I think I remember when we played it.
And you use a D.
Yeah. I think I remember when we played low, yeah, I just had 60 minutes tonight.
Stars and strap oil. See to it, yeah. Yeah, that extra changes on the end of it, you know, I like that where you hold that F and back up in the C, A, B, G.
We got the D last time. I'm glad I'm facing that way. These don't come out on this tape, see. The only one we hear if he makes a mistake, I don't know it, but if he happen to make a mistake, you're the only one that's on the tape. See, we're both facing that way. So you're under the gun.
I'm under the gun.
Yeah.
Well, or some other key. Yeah, if you want to. A.
Fine. That makes sense, whatever you want.
Still got some. Yours.
There we go.
Now let's see my E. Seems like that's a little fast. That's the other not with it.
That's what it is. All right.
Big.
Still going. You still got a little bit left.
There's a log cabin up here.
One more song ought to do yet. But Adrian's real. You're through. Let me turn mine off.
Yeah, I don't know if
Well, one, I goofed up here trying to play it the other by myself the other time, a specific slope. Now what's that? Does that make a circle in it, or what was it?
it's just got a little quick B if you want to put it in.
Yeah, after the D, and it is.
It's a quick, you don't hit one lick, is it?
And this is barely.
Yeah. Well,
And the message is all the E are all my That's
now,
and if you keep thinking, ought to go and get out here, ought to get into E, but it's just,
It's kind of tricky too.
it sounds to me like you changed it really out of the A to something, I don't know what, but it probably is.
I don't know.
I got, wait, bull. Occasionally experiment with something new and don't go anywhere with it. So just overlook those.
Came in to find entertainment, huh?
I just couldn't stay away, could you? Oh. Where is it she's going to be here? Or has she hasn't been here yet, has she? Oh, I was thinking, who am I? Miss Dolly. I'm thinking Miss Dolly when you said Kitty. Miss Kitty, Miss Dolly. Yeah,
Kitty,
you're talking about.
KTTS.
Yeah.
She played during Florida for mine last night.
Oh.
Oh, you mean
Well, I haven't heard of this.
woman disc jockey?
Yeah, I haven't heard her yet.
On KTTS.
Oh, we haven't got that.
I
They
haven't
told me at the end.
Oh, that's fine. Well, that's
I did. Now she on Sunday night. She's on both of them.
She's just the very best, and she's just a lot like me.
Is that so?
She's my cousin.
Oh.
She
Well, I've heard of her, but I haven't ever
Lonnie was
heard of
over
her.
there a long time back. I haven't seen her since she was a little girl, about 8 or 9 years old, and they introduced Lonnie to her, and he didn't know it either. She told him, said, I'm a relation of yours, said, I'm your wife, your cousin, you know, when she first said. So then the other day, she come over and spent the afternoon with me.
Well,
Haven't seen her since she was a little girl.
And is he a cousin, you say?
Her,
She'd be a second cousin,
yeah.
I guess. But of course, her.
she's not
let's
first
see.
cousin. She's the Ledbetter.
Uh-huh. Well,
But she is kind of clever. I do like to hear her.
yeah, you want some of this?
hey, I might get a piece of that. Yeah.
I got a piece of peppermint and put in, just when you're not, all right.
I keep food in the set. Can't sleep.
Play a little Clark Wolf.
see. There was Clark, and then I knew there was one other.
Canary.
Yeah, Canary. And then Waltz and Avery. And what was the other one you named?
Swedish.
Swedish Waltz, yeah.
That's the one that's kind of like that one you want to have.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'll tell you, there's another one that you haven't played because it's close to Fox. What's the Fox Waltz? The Red Fox Waltz?
Indeed.
Yeah, and then that Bluebird Waltz is in D too. Hey, Bluebird's the one we haven't played since.
I'm off again.
Canary. I like those waltzes in A. I think about as good as any. I think those the open.
It's got a pretty sound.
Well, I think open strings hold, give you kind of a longer note, you know, for a waltz or something. Well, what about that waltz in A? So I can mess up on that.
You mean that one you hold?
Yeah, the one you hold. Yeah.
But you don't. Well, good. Come on, Art. Hello, buddy.
Tony, how you doing?
Fine.
Gordon McCann.
Tony Beasley. I know you, Tony. I know you.
Get your pull up your chair. Go. Always run for it.
Yeah.
That's a peculiar thing to me. Now you want to cowboy law.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember this play.
Now this place where you come up after you go
Oh,
to
this-
D, sounds like you come right back to D, but you really should use an A.
You're in D, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
It sounds like it kind of comes back, but it works out better from this.
Stay in D?
Just no, just come from your G back to an
Oh.
A7, place of coming back to D. It kind of sounds like you're coming back to D if you listen to the sound. But I believe the other worked out. You might try
What a
to
feel for it.
haven't worked out no good.
It's an A note.
Yeah.
So it's all right.
Slip an E in there somewhere.
No, it's just a
Straight.
right. I've never heard of it.
I warn you, you may hear some bad notes here every once in a while. Just overlook it.
Remember how do ring schools
Yeah,
uses a
yeah,
B?
yeah.
down and say black boy. Okay. When it gets ready,
The black boy usually anyway.
hey,
Yeah, it goes to that F.
that's sure.
Yeah.
It's the same routine.
Where you go to the out chord.
Yeah, with the A minor. I play the C. That's to go around just like you do. Now you play it in A and you play it in A.
13,
if you're playing this, if you're playing that in G, you'd have
A, I, and E, and then when he changes, what do you call it, bridge or whatever, it was a G.
Yeah. After you get out of that E, just hit a G once. C. You're right back in C, see?
I've looked for that and I've looked for it on the guitar, but
Not yet.
Two times.
E. Go through it.
go back to A before you go back to G. Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick one.
Yeah, it's quick.
Yeah. I kind of fixed that up from 2 or 3 different versions.
And they go there, the actual gift, but they just
How does that $50? Let's play Tennessee Waltz.
a D.
There's a good D in there before you go to the G.
Yeah. When you're in that C, before you go just basically just going over to that, you use the D and then over to G.
Yeah, that's right. I think I do.
Oh, of course I know. Don't make this the last trip then. You come back here.
That's it, Tony.
Come back.
Nice meeting you. See you next week. Yeah. See you again.
You come back here.
Come over sometime.
Try to.
All right.
Just got a lot of places to go. That's a lot of that time.
That's right.
That's real old. Yeah.
If you get too busy to fiddle, though, it's just like fiddling. If you're busy,
Too big.
I kind of want to slow down a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm on command though.
Well, good. Glad to hear that.
you have to slow down a little.
You got them tapes? Yeah.
Keep that.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see you later.
Okay, come back now.
That's kind of the way it goes. Ricky, come on.
I just made one.
Let somebody else do it anyway.
I never heard nobody else play it like that.
Play it like
But I want to look in.
play it the other way.
Yep, the kid.
That's pretty much like I do.
Yeah, that's kind of like you do. I just added that other on there. I don't know. I never did hear nobody else do it. I get it. I used to play guitar with another fellow there named Joe. He didn't have a lot of tunes he played. That was one of his best tunes. He played that really good, and he played pictures one time good.
What do you both mean by old-time fiddling? How would you say it's different? Old-time Ozarks fiddling. Is there any way you
Well,
would define it?
it's just about like we played it, kept, he was just, he had the old-time lick.
The old
Hard
time
to
touch is a kind of, if I was going to try to explain it, it's almost kind of a lonesome type of fiddle.
Yeah, he was, that particular tune, and he had that and that, let's say, Fisher Horn. And a few of them tunes, I thought he was awfully good at. Of course, that's where I learned to play it very much. I was learning, but I was playing guitar and I was playing it. And I picked up a lot of stuff from his fiddle. But,
Now there's a kind of a, here's, talking about old time, I had my uncle that I'm always talking about was born in 53, and he didn't die till about 34, so he was well past 80, past 80. But he went way back, and his type of fiddling was what I call old time fiddling. One thing, he did quite a lot of cross-eyed A.
Yeah.
They did that quite a lot. And also he did some tuning in D. You know, he dropped that G string down to it and then lowered that C string down to a D.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can play Bonaparte the Treat that way. I play the D,
Yeah.
and I get the,
Kind of a drone sound in it.
and
Kind
I play it in this E, and I can get just plain
Almost
E.
the same thing.
Same thing. That's where you know it's playing E.
You don't have to change the pitch.
That way I don't have to change it.
And then another thing, a lot, you didn't notice it then, but a lot of old timers played, nobody played it after much, but they played some notes in there. That's what we're playing now, these minor notes.
Yeah.
A lot of minor.
What I mean is, there's a lonesome sound there.
And the guitar players back then,
They didn't know
they
that.
didn't know how to get it.
They just ignored it.
They just played the old straight chords
Yeah.
and left all them chords out.
And there's a word.
But then nowadays,
Yeah, there's a period in there when there wasn't much of a guitar section. They used knitting needles or something, you know, to beat on them.
my dad played.
Fiddle sticks.
And my uncle, he
Fiddle
played
sticks.
Arkansas Tavern. When he had on the chord, he was pecking on the little strings with the, I believe it was, with the mid needles.
Yeah.
And when he'd come over on trying on Arkansas Tavern, he'd
make it no good.
I thought it sounded good then, you know. We didn't, have nobody second.
And the guitars were off before, when you got hold of them.
That old record, those old records there. You
Yeah.
can tell that. That's what I said. There's quite a difference.
I'll tell you what I call old time. And that's old Solomon. To me, he sounds old time.
Yeah.
That's some fellow here.
Texas fiddler.
Oh.
He's Texas fiddler. And I've got some on the tape that I'll let you have.
I like this that he got.
I think I would class him as an old time.
And another thing that kind of makes me think of old time feeling, it wasn't the leather fast fiddling.
Oh no, they don't.
It wasn't fast fiddling. It is. If you're going to square dance with them, it's a nice, smooth, slow dance.
And they dance to the music.
Yeah.
Now then, they want you to play just as fast as you go. All they do is keep rhythm and go around and around.
Yeah.
They're not dancing.
And when they're promenading, they're school hopping, one foot to another. But back in there, now, I remember one night, back there when my uncle had a party, and there was lots of us Galbraiths there. And there was everybody playing the music was the Galbraith, and everybody in the set.
Oh, yeah.
Galbraith wife.
Well, that's
The Galbraith.
Uncle Joe played the fiddle, and Clay played the guitar, Fred played the guitar, and Cora played the piano. And then we made up with 4 Galbraith men and their wives to dance.
Of course, that is. So it wasn't so unusual then.
Well, no.
They could have done this over Ramona's little. They could have done it.
Oh, sure.
They could have had 4 or 5 sets.
Well, they could have done it. You had enough folks to done it. But nearly always, when back in those old dances, there's 1 or 2 people that's too religious to dance.
Yeah.
They might go and sit over in the corner. They look kind of uncomfortable. They enjoyed it, but they didn't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Is that the truth?
Nowadays, they don't. I don't think anything wrong with it. It's just what you do. Now you do it and get off it and make a wrong out of it.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do it. But I don't think anything wrong with it. I don't think anything wrong with playing for one.
Well,
Yeah.
we had some kinfolk who come to these parties. Kind of come, of course, maybe somebody out of state was there and they wanted to see him. He'd sit over there and look around his nose, he wanted to be just dying to dance, tell the truth.
Yeah.
But his wife probably was had religion that would let him.
I'll tell you what's down mine. The kind of people that dance. They was a rough, tough bunch. And they dance, and they have a fight before it over. Have a fight, and maybe
Knock somebody or something.
knock somebody.
That's what gave it that name.